Welcome to a deep dive into a really fascinating area, the world of
Mhm.
consciousness physics. We're going to be talking about where psychology and neuroscience and even a little bit of physics all kind of come together.
Yeah. It's a wild ride. But
Um,
I think what's really intriguing about this topic is that a lot of the source material that we're looking at focuses on something we do every day, which is free association, just
okay,
letting our thoughts kind of flow and saying whatever comes to mind.
okay. So free association as a key to unlocking the mysteries of consciousness.
Hmm?
Okay, I'm hooked already.
Yeah.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's kind of ground this exploration. Where do we even begin?
Well, I think a good starting point is actually to go way back to Sigmund Freud, the father of
Yeah,
psychoanalysis.
right.
And he was really onto something, I think, with his concept of free association as a tool for understanding the unconscious. I like to think about it as our minds are like icebergs, right? The conscious part is just the tip.
Right.
And then beneath the surface is this vast hidden world of thoughts and feelings that we're not even aware of.
Right, the unconscious. So Freud believed that free association was a way to kind of tap into that hidden
Yeah.
world, like a diver exploring those depths of the iceberg.
Precisely. And what he found was that these seemingly random thoughts and images
Yeah.
that pop up during free association actually hold a lot of clues to deeper meanings, unresolved conflicts, and those sort of hidden motivations that are driving our behavior. It's kind of like deciphering a dream,
Hmm.
where those bizarre images actually represent something much, much deeper.
Yeah, so it's not just random rambling. There's a method to the madness.
Yeah.
But how did Freud explain this connection between free association and the unconscious?
Well, he introduced this idea of what he called primary and secondary processes. The unconscious, he believed, operates on these primary processes. Think raw emotions, pleasure-seeking impulses. It's a world that's very fluid and dreamlike. It's
Yeah.
not bound by, logic or reality.
Okay, so it's like the impulsive, instinctual part of ourselves,
Mhm.
sort of like the inner child who just wants what it wants.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And then you have the secondary processes, which
Mm.
govern our conscious mind. So this is the more logical, rational part of us,
Right.
the one that's bound by the constraints of reality.
So it's the responsible adult
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep things in order, while the inner child is throwing a tantrum in the background.
You got it.
Yeah.
And Freud believed that free association allows us to kind of bridge these two worlds,
Okay.
right? By letting go of those conscious filters, we can get a glimpse into those primary processes,
Mm.
that hidden layer where our desires and emotions are running a bit more wild.
Okay, but this is fascinating. But where does physics come into all of this? I mean, we're talking about the mind, not the laws of motion.
That's where things get really mind-blowing,
Okay.
to see that connection. We need to fast forward a bit to the world of cognitive psychology
Okay.
and the work of Daniel Kahneman.
Okay. A Nobel Prize winning psychologist. Now we're getting serious.
Yeah. He's a big name.
So how does Kahneman fit into this picture?
Well, he proposed a model of thinking that actually mirrors a lot of Freud's ideas in a really fascinating way. He called them System 1 and System 2 thinking.
Okay, hold on. Are we about to meet the impulsive child and the responsible adult again? But in a different guise.
You're catching on quickly.
Okay.
Yeah. System 1 is a lot like Freud's primary process. It's fast, intuitive, emotional, and often prone to biases. It's that gut feeling, that snap judgment you make without even thinking.
And system 2 is the more deliberate, logical one. Kind of like Freud's secondary process that steps in and says, hey, maybe we should think this through a little bit more.
Exactly. System 2 is slower, it's analytical, it weighs the evidence before making a decision. Now, what's remarkable is that free association, according to Kahneman, allows us to tap into that System 1 thinking,
Okay.
to see those intuitive and sometimes irrational impulses that are actually driving our behavior.
Okay. I'm seeing the parallels here, but how does any of this relate to physics? We're talking about psychology
Right.
and the mind, not subatomic particles.
That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
To make that connection, we need to bring in another brilliant mind, Carl Friston, a neuroscientist who developed something called the free energy principle, or FEP. It's a pretty complex theory.
Okay.
But the gist of it is that our brains are like prediction machines,
Yep.
constantly trying to anticipate what will happen next
Mm-hmm.
and minimize surprises.
So, like, my brain is always trying to make sense of the world, create order out of the chaos.
Exactly. And this is where the physics comes in.
Yep.
Friston connected this idea of minimizing surprises to the concept of entropy. Remember entropy from high school physics?
Vaguely. It's like, if I don't constantly tidy up, my house will descend into utter chaos. Is that what we're talking about here?
The perfect analogy.
Okay.
Our brains, like all living systems, are fighting against entropy. They're trying to maintain order and predictability.
Mm-hmm.
And we do this by making accurate predictions
Okay.
about the world around us.
So my brain is like a constant cleaning crew,
Mm-hmm.
tidying up my mental house to avoid chaos.
Precisely.
Okay.
And those unexpected events, those prediction errors, well, they increase free energy
Right.
in the system.
Uh-huh.
They force our brains to work harder, to adjust, to learn, to reorganize our mental furniture, so to speak.
Okay. Now my brain is doing backflips. This is a lot to take in,
Mm.
but I'm starting to see the connections here. Our brains are trying to minimize surprise, which means minimizing entropy, and free association somehow fits into this equation.
You're getting it. Free association, by giving voice to those unfiltered System 1 thoughts, allows us to actually witness those prediction errors in action.
Right.
You know, we see those moments where our internal models of the world clash with reality,
Mm-hmm.
where our, neat and tidy mental house suddenly gets shaken up.
Wow. This is definitely going deeper than I expected.
Okay.
I'm going to need a moment to process all this, but I'm also eager to hear more, especially about how consciousness itself fits into this picture.
Well, hold on tight, because we're about to dive even deeper, exploring how these processes might actually give rise to our sense of self,
Huh.
our conscious experience of the world. It's a journey that will take us from the depths of the unconscious to the frontiers of neuroscience.
I'm ready for it. Let's keep exploring. Okay, so we've got Freud's unconscious, Kahneman's two thinking systems, and Friston's brain as a prediction machine. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but it's all starting to come together. Now, the big question, how does all of this relate to consciousness itself?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to tackle it, we need to bring in another groundbreaking thinker, Mark Solms, a neuropsychoanalyst who's really been shaking things up in the world of neuroscience. You know, for a long time, the dominant view is that consciousness arises from the cortex, that outer layer of the brain that's responsible for higher-level thinking. But Solms actually challenges that idea.
Okay, so what's his take on consciousness then? If it's not just the cortex, where does it come from?
Well, he believes that consciousness is actually rooted in emotions and a much more primitive part of the brain called the reticular system. It's the part that keeps us alert and aware of our surroundings, even when we're not actively thinking. You know, he argues that our feelings are actually more fundamental to consciousness than our thoughts.
Wow, so it's not all about logic and reason. Our emotions are actually calling the shots when it comes to consciousness. That's pretty radical.
It is, and it connects back to Freud in a fascinating way. Solms actually suggests that this primary emotion-driven consciousness is what Freud was getting at with his concept of the id. You know, those basic drives, instincts, the part of us that seeks pleasure and avoids pain. He's essentially saying that at its core, consciousness is driven by those primal impulses.
This is blowing my mind. So if this primary consciousness is so fundamental, what's the role of the cortex then? Is it just along for the ride?
Not quite. Solms sees the cortex as a kind of stabilizer. You know, it takes those raw emotional experiences from the reticular system, and it helps us form more stable, coherent representations of the world. Think of it like this. You have this raw emotional energy coming from the reticular system, and the cortex kind of steps in to shape it, to give it structure, to make sense of it.
So the cortex is like a sculptor, taking this raw clay of our emotions and kind of shaping it into something we can recognize, something we can understand.
A beautiful analogy. And this is where free association becomes even more interesting. It allows us to kind of glimpse how that sculpting process works, how our brains move from raw experience to conscious thought. By tapping into those unfiltered primary processes we can actually see those primal impulses in action, the raw material that our cortex then works with.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here, how all of these pieces fit together. But there's another piece of the puzzle that we talked about earlier, the default mode network, or DMN. How does that fit into all of this? Is it the sculptor, the clay, or something else entirely?
That's a great question, and it takes us even deeper into the mystery of consciousness. The DMN is this network of brain regions that's most active when our minds are at rest. When we're daydreaming,
Hmm.
introspecting, not focused on any particular task.
That's like the brain screensaver mode. What's going on when we're just letting our minds wander?
Well, here's the kicker. Researchers like Carhart, Harris, and Friston, who we talked about earlier, believe that the DMN might actually be the neurological basis for Freud's concept of the ego.
Whoa, hold on. Are you saying that our sense of self, our ego, is tied to this daydreaming network? That's wild.
It is, and it makes sense when you think about it. The DMN is all about self-reflection, connecting our thoughts and feelings, constructing those narratives about who we are, where we've been, and where we're going. That sounds a lot like what the ego does, doesn't
It
it?
does. So does that mean that free association activates the DMN? Is that how we
Mm.
tap into this deeper level of self-understanding?
That's what's so fascinating. Free association by letting our minds wander freely seems to tap into the DMN. It's bridging those primary processes of the reticular system with the more structured secondary processes of the cortex. It's like we're connecting the impulsive child with the responsible adult,
Hmm.
allowing them to have a conversation and maybe even learn from each other.
Okay. I'm getting chills here. This is all starting to click. But what about that entropic brain idea we touched on earlier? How does that play into all this? Is our sense of self, our ego, constantly battling entropy too?
That's a brilliant question, and it brings us to Robin Carhart Harris and his fascinating theory of the entropic brain. He sees the brain as existing on a spectrum of entropy.
Remind me again, entropy is about disorder, right? So what does it mean for a brain to be more or less entropic?
Well, think about it in terms of, flexibility and organization
Yeah.
in our thinking. Carhart Harris suggests that primary consciousness, the kind we experience as infants or during psychedelic experiences, is a state of high entropy.
So it's more random, less structured, like that impulsive child running around without any rules.
Exactly. It's a swirling cloud of thoughts and feelings, not yet organized into clear-cut categories or narratives. Secondary consciousness, our typical adult state, is lower entropy. It's more orderly, more predictable.
So the responsible adult has come in and tidied up the messy playroom of the mind.
Precisely. It's where the ego steps in, imposes structure, minimizes those prediction errors, and creates a more stable experience of the world. And what's fascinating is that Carhart Harris believes that psychedelics actually increase entropy in the brain, disrupting the DMN and leading to a more fluid, primary process-like state of consciousness.
Whoa! So psychedelics are like entropy boosters for the brain. That explains a lot about the kinds of experiences people report on them, like ego dissolution and a sense of oneness with the universe. It's like they're temporarily turning down the volume on that responsible adult and letting the inner child run free.
Exactly. But it's not just about chaos. It's about accessing a different kind of order, a more fundamental level of consciousness that's less bound by the constraints of the ego and the DMN. And what's really fascinating is that free association without any psychedelics seems to tap into this same process, albeit to a lesser degree. It allows us to kind of loosen the grip of the ego and explore those less structured aspects of our mind.
This is incredible. I'm
Yeah.
starting to see free association in a whole new light. It's not just about uncovering hidden memories or resolving conflicts. It's about exploring the very nature of consciousness itself, the interplay between order and chaos, the impulsive child and the responsible adult. All those forces at play within our minds.
Beautifully put. And that brings us to the therapeutic implications of free association, which are just as profound, but we'll save that exploration for our next segment.
I can't wait. This has been an incredible journey so far. I'm eager to hear how all of this connects to healing and growth. All right, we've covered some seriously mind-bending territory here, from the depths of the unconscious to brains battling entropy. And it's incredible to think that something as simple as free association could offer such profound insights into the nature of consciousness. But let's bring it all home now. How does this journey into the entropic depths of our minds actually help us heal and grow?
That's where the real magic happens. You see, free association can be seen as a process of symbolization. We take those raw, unprocessed experiences, emotions, sensations, memories, and we translate them into meaningful thoughts and narratives. It's like we're taking those swirling clouds of high entropy and giving them shape, turning them into something we can understand and integrate into our conscious experience.
So it's like learning a new language,
Right.
one that allows us to communicate with those deeper parts of ourselves, those parts that might be driving our behavior without us even realizing it.
Exactly. And the therapeutic setting provides a safe space for this to happen. The therapist acts as a guide, helping us navigate those uncharted waters and translate those symbolic messages that are coming from our unconscious.
That makes sense. But how does this symbolization actually lead to healing? What's happening in the brain when we do this? Is it simply about understanding those hidden parts of ourselves, or is there something more going on?
Well, remember the free energy principle we talked about?
Mhm.
Our brains are constantly trying to minimize surprise, to maintain predictability.
Right.
But sometimes those surprises are actually necessary for growth.
Okay.
They challenge our existing models of the world, and they force us to adapt, to create new and more nuanced understandings.
So it's like those aha moments when we suddenly see things in a new light, those moments when something clicks and we realize we need to change our perspective.
Precisely. And free association can be a way to intentionally create those aha moments, to confront those surprising or unsettling aspects of ourselves that we might normally repress. It's like shaking up our mental snow globe,
Yeah.
seeing what new patterns emerge.
But wouldn't that increase free energy, create more chaos in the system? I mean, isn't that supposed to be a bad thing according to Friston's theory?
Not necessarily. Remember, free energy is only a problem when it becomes overwhelming
Okay.
in the safe container of therapy.
Yeah.
With a skilled therapist helping us navigate those turbulent waters, we can actually use those spikes in free energy to fuel growth and transformation. It's like going to the gym for your mind. A little bit of stress and challenge can actually make you stronger.
I see. So it's like we're using those prediction errors, those surprises, to update our internal models, to create a more accurate and nuanced understanding of ourselves and the world. We're not just avoiding chaos. We're learning to dance with it.
Exactly. And this is where the concept of symbolizing transmodality comes in. It's the idea that therapy allows us to shift between different modes of symbolization. We might start with a bodily sensation, then move to an emotion, then an image, then words, helping us integrate those difficult experiences on multiple levels. It's a holistic process that engages the whole brain, from those, primitive emotional centers to the higher level meaning making regions of the cortex.
So it's not just about talking things out. It's about experiencing those emotions,
Yeah.
feeling them in our bodies and finding new ways to express them. It's about integrating those different parts of ourselves, the impulsive child and the responsible adult, the chaotic and the orderly.
You got it. It's all about creating a more integrated sense of self. And it all comes back to that fundamental dance between order and chaos, entropy and complexity. By embracing a little healthy chaos, by allowing ourselves to explore those less structured aspects of our minds, we can actually create a more resilient and adaptable sense of self.
Wow, this has been such an incredible deep dive. We've gone from Freud's talking cure to brains battling entropy, and I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how free association, this seemingly simple act, can unlock such profound insights into the human mind.
It truly is a remarkable tool. And what's even more exciting is that we've only just scratched the surface of consciousness physics. There's so much more to explore, so many more connections to be made between these different fields of study.
Well, you've certainly given us a lot to ponder. So for our listeners out there, here's a final thought to chew on. If our brains are constantly trying to create order and predictability, what happens when we intentionally introduce a little chaos into the system? Could embracing those unpredictable moments, those moments of surprise and uncertainty, actually be the key to unlocking our full potential, to becoming more resilient, more creative, more fully alive? The answer might surprise you. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.